we're having tremendous developments that are rapidly changing very, very quickly in Syria. We have the Syrian armed opposition now reaching areas next to Hama. Now look, yesterday the report started happening that the armed opposition in Syria, they reached the outskirts of Aleppo. Reports that were initially denied by Syria. However, then we started to have confirmations that they are not only on the outskirts of Aleppo, that they are actually controlling Aleppo. Now we have all of the Syrian opposition forces controlling. How solid is the control? How long will they control it? That's a different debate. But literally going in and taking these areas up to Hama. Hama is very, very close to Homs, which is a very key location. Hama is a very strategic place, and there have been reports that the Syrian armed forces started to retreat. They started to retreat from Hama. And how else can you explain the rapid move coming from the Syrian opposition? Okay. To clarify further, look at this map here. This is the map of Syria. Yesterday we were talking about the M5 road. The M5 road, which is an extremely strategic road stretching from Aleppo down to Hama, Homs, Damascus, reaching near Dar'a and the Suwaida alongside the Jordanian borders. And if we look at this road, yesterday, the opposition forces, they were around about this area. Now we're talking about Hama. Where is Hama? Hama is only a few miles away from the northern Lebanese borders, next to Homs. How did the opposition move so rapidly from these areas down to Hama? And Hama, that's an ongoing thing now. We're having more and more reports coming from people on the ground about the control or lack thereof of the Syrian armed opposition in Hama, with reports about the Syrian army retreating. Well, clearly how we have the Syrian army retreating. I mean, the opposition posted some videos as well of them imprisoning some of the people working for the government with the Assad government in some of these locations in Aleppo and in other areas too. Okay, the only thing that will explain it is a retreat, and a retreat has been evident. Why is the Syrian army retreating? The Syrian army is retreating for various reasons. They could be retreating to primarily protect Homs, which is considered to be the main key location before Damascus. That's the next step. We have had reports or confirmation statements coming from the Syrian opposition that now we're talking about liberating Syria. They're not just talking about a limited operation. Turkey spoke about a limited operation, not the Syrian opposition. The Syrian opposition said, we began here in Halab, but we are looking to liberate all of Syria. Now, the Syrian army, funny enough, what they've done here is started to use the help of the Kurdish movements that are controlling some parts of the northeastern parts of Syria and are backed by the United States as well, against the mostly Turkish-backed and also United States-backed Syrian opposition controlling Aleppo. And there were certain confirmations that the Syrian democratic forces in yellow, right, are controlling some of the parts of Aleppo. Why? Because they are coordinating, and you need to be patient here because it can be sometimes overwhelming for those of you who haven't, monitored the Syrian situation for a while. Syria, you have the government control areas, the Syrian opposition controlled areas, other movements within the Syrian opposition controlled areas, the Kurdish movements controlled areas. Now, why did the Kurdish movements join forces with the government with this? Although the government is against all of the talks about, having a different section of the Syrian territories going towards Kurdistan, for example. It's because they have a problem with Erdogan. It's because they have a problem with Turkey, and they know that these forces are backed by Turkey. So therefore, they are willing to participate with the Syrian government in this offensive in Aleppo. How successful that was, again, we're talking about a live, updated situation. The Syrian opposition indeed published footage of them controlling key hubs of the entirety of Aleppo. So the Kurdish forces that are supporting or, tactically siding with the Syrian government, not strategically, in this area, are probably having certain disruptions towards the advancement of the Turkish-backed opposition coming from the northeastern side of Syria. All of that indicates that it took the Syrian army by surprise. That's the first argument. So they did not want to go out on an all-out confrontation that they weren't necessarily prepared for. The second assumption is the fact that, the Syrian armed forces wanted to primarily focus and put in their heavy forces in the Homs area, because they probably had a red line. To them, they were like, okay, we are facing a surprise offensive. They have prepared for it for a long time. The timing, quite suspicious. However, they decided to implement it now, same day or the day after we had a ceasefire in Lebanon, shortly after the ceasefire in Lebanon, 15 hours after Netanyahu was warning Syria as well. And we have red lines. What are the red lines? The red lines could be Homs. The red line could be Homs, because Homs, it would lock all of this area from Aleppo to Homs, coming very close to the Lebanese borders, and also locking this area that is also controlled by the Syrian government. Latakia, Tartus, these areas. So the Syrian government locations will be locked in this area, and the opposition would be controlling the very strategic M5, again, making it easier to continue their advancement towards Damascus and potentially more down south. Another thing that we could be looking at is, the timing of this attack came when? It came after we had a ceasefire in Lebanon. So Hezbollah were not assisting the Syrian government in certain areas, and they were fighting against the Israeli occupation in this war. And they have more of their forces in Lebanon. And Iran was busy with all of these escalations that are happening. Also, we were talking about a de-escalation process for the past 4 years between Syria and large parts of the Syrian opposition, because not all the Syrian opposition is united under one umbrella. That's been a key thing since the beginning of what was labeled at the time the Syrian Revolution, that turned into what was followingly labeled as the civil war in Syria, or the conflict in Syria. and they are waiting for more reinforcements. Where could they get their reinforcements from? A couple of locations. The first reinforcement that we had reports about is Iraq. Iraqi movements declared that they are sending or prepared to send tens of thousands of armed fighters to help the Syrian government stop this advancement down south. We heard reports, but they did not come officially from the movement of Ansarullah, that Yemen might also be helping. Now, mind you, that hasn't been confirmed by Ansarullah. And also, that is less likely. Why? Because firstly, in Iraq, you have excess. You have many people willing to fight, and they would make up the numbers that would be demanded by the Syrian government to stop the advancement of the ongoing forces of the Syrian opposition. Now, these are the primary things that we're talking about here. Why now, and why the M5? I spoke about it in more detail yesterday. I will briefly speak about this now. The M5 is one of the key roads in Syria that is connecting the northern part to the southern part towards the western coast of Syria. And this has been an area under Syrian government control for the past 4 years. The Syrian opposition, as you can see in this map, they have been positioned in these areas before. Now this is the new map of their advancement here, but before that, they were primarily in these areas towards the Idlib province, alongside the northern parts that are at the border with Turkey, and towards the northeastern side, because this is the northwestern side, towards the northeastern side, we had the Kurdish movements, but the rest of it was Syria. What's happening is not something light. This is not something that anyone can take lightly, by the way. It's a very dangerous escalation in Syria. And there are assumptions that we are indeed talking about a very large operation coming from these movements. Okay, what's being done to try and solve this problem now? What's being done to try and mediate? Because, like I said, just a few weeks back, in recent months, we've had talks with Turkey, potentially meeting with the government in Syria, having a reconciliation process with parts of the opposition as well. Most of the parties involved in the Sochi and Astana summits confirming that they all want to have a united Syrian state and not divided. In return, would they have certain reforms being done by the government? Because the main movement started due to government corruption and to do with freedoms and things like that in the beginning, but then it quickly escalated to something more serious, more violent, and you had countries immediately being involved with a vast history of supporting war crimes globally. What's being done? The thing that is being done primarily is coming from Iran. Russia, they had tense talks with Turkey, telling to the Turkish government, you're breaching the agreements. They told the Turkish government, you are breaching the agreements that we had in Astana and Sochi. What are you doing? Right? To that, Turkey responded, we are not involved in the fighting. The Turkish foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, he said, we're not involved in the fighting, and we know that this is a limited operation. Again, that's not the full picture. Why? Because, well, all of the weapons are from Turkey, training is from Turkey, the arms from Turkey, vehicles from Turkey, and not only Turkey, you're talking about other countries too. And Turkey is a member of the NATO. We had Ukrainian support for some of the opposition forces that are fighting now and expanding. And of course, US support. And some of them, and we're trying to be as objective as possible and not conclusive and labeling everyone, some of the opposition movements that were advancing were talking with Israeli media. They were talking with the Israeli broadcasting, Kan 11, speaking with them, saying that, we don't want to, necessarily worry the Israelis. Our problem here is Iran, Russia, and the regime of Bashar al-Assad. This is what they're saying to Israeli media. And of course, they have history, some of them, with Israel treating some of them in their hospitals, so supporting them with intel, at least intel. And let's not forget that these operations that are ongoing, and could be seen or sold to the public in mass, whether the Arab or Muslim public or the Western public, as natural moves that are just happening like that, would later, in a few decades' time, be revealed as operations, covert operations by the CIA, right? Like what? Well, like Operation Cyclone. Operation Cyclone, the program that was financing and arming the Mujahideen in Afghanistan by the CIA from 1979 to 1989, before and after the military intervention of the Soviets in Afghanistan. And who was involved? Well, Israel, the United States, Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, alongside other countries too. How much did the CIA spend? Reports over $2 billion in Operation Cyclone in Afghanistan. Zbigniew Brzezinski, at the time, he visited the Mujahideen. He was the national security advisor at the time. He visited them, the fighters in Afghanistan, and he told them, you are fighters, God is with you. God is with you. You are genuine fighters, and go and take your homes, and we're supporting you. Zbigniew Brzezinski. And not only Zbigniew Brzezinski, Margaret Thatcher, apartheid supporting Margaret Thatcher. And one of my followers kindly shared a video with me, actually, that I want to share with you, of Margaret Thatcher herself, right? In 1981, visiting the Mujahideen. Let me show you.
Inside the bright tented enclosure, 1,500 men waited. We were told that many of these men were Mujahideen who traveled from the border specially for this meeting. A mullah chanted some verses from the Quran concerning exiles. Mrs. Thatcher promised them an extra £2 million worth of aid, and she made clear the West's support for the Afghan resistance fighters.
I want to say that the hearts of the free world are with you, and with those of your countrymen who have stayed.
And that gained her ringing shouts of support.
Margaret Thatcher, apartheid supporting Margaret Thatcher, going to to visit the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, telling them that we are with you. We are with you. With the resistance fighters, right? All of a sudden, when it's suitable for the empire, they become resistance fighters. Woohoo! And I know I shared this video with you as well, and I will share it again with you. This is the video of Zbigniew Brzezinski in Afghanistan as well. That's during Operation Cyclone, by the way, that I was speaking about. That was, like all of the other operations of the CIA, they are the front of the United States empire. Operation Ajax in Iran before, in Cuba, and of course Cyclone, alongside other operations too. This is the video of Brzezinski.
U.S. National Security Advisor Brzezinski flew to Pakistan to set about rallying resistance. He wanted to arm the Mujahideen without revealing America's role. On the Afghan border near the Khyber Pass, he urged the soldiers of God to redouble their efforts.
We know of their deep belief in God, and we are confident that their struggle will succeed. That land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
There you have it. Okay. At the time, the people who were fighting, the Soviets, of course, they weren't viewing anything apart from what they're doing. And that's why I mentioned this example when it comes to Afghanistan. That operation wasn't very visible to what's happening on the ground when it comes to the people who were actually fighting. All of a sudden, countries under the US umbrella allowing people to go and fight. All of a sudden, all of the roads are open to Afghanistan. All of the roads are open to other Arab countries, other Muslim countries. All the roads are open. Are the roads open to, were the roads open to Israel at any point? Were they ever open to Israel, a country occupying Palestine for all of that time? And that's why it's important to understand the people backing these moves to establish what is actually happening on the ground. And again, what's happening in Syria now can be revealed in the next couple of decades as a failed operation, or if something changed, they might say a successful operation. That was supported and backed by the CIA, you know, in future WikiLeaks. The timing is exceptionally suspicious. The roads that they are trying to control in Syria are exceptionally strategic roads, and you have movements that are outright declaring that they are fighting against movements fighting against Israel. The active resistance front, the resistance front actively fighting against Israel in the form of countries or movements in countries, Iran, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Who does that support? And who will end up benefiting from it? And do these people fighting now against the Syrian government, do they have a track record of firing a bullet at Israel? They don't have a track record of firing one bullet at Israel. Sorry, there was once at one point, they accidentally fired a bullet at Israel, and then they apologized for it. So we're not talking about a track record here, and the timing is very suspicious. And also, this came after the United States and Israel failed with their attempts to convince Russia to pass or stop passing arms or allowing Syria to pass arms to Lebanon through Syria, to which the Russians responded, that's not part of our duties. When it comes to the apology, this is one of the apologies here. Ex-defense minister Ya'alon, who's actually confirming that there's a genocide now in Gaza, actually, funny enough, he said that the Islamic State apologized to Israel for a November clash. You know, they accidentally opened fire and they apologized. And we haven't seen anything since. Well, we have seen Israel treating the wounded coming from them, right? That's what we had. And again, suspicious but serious. Well, what's happening is exceptionally serious. And when it comes to also, of course, the treating of the wounded, Israel treating Al-Qaeda fighters wounded in Syria civil war. That's from the Jerusalem Post. Amnesty report, ISIS armed with US weapons. That's also confirmed, even in Israel and in Western mainstream media. Now, of course, this situation is developing, and we will continue monitoring the situation and what's happening with it to shed some light as to what's going on in Syria. What I wanted to talk to you finally is what attempts are being taken. What attempts are being taken now to stop what's happening? The effort is coming from Russia's talking to Turkey primarily, but the main thing that could be successful, that could have some success, is this: the Iranian foreign minister Abbas Araghchi going to Syria and then going to Turkey. He's outright going literally directly to Syria, and then he's going to go to Turkey to try and see if we can get this resolved. We had the peace process going on. We were looking at de-escalation. We just came out of a war with a genocide entity, and you didn't help us with a thing. As a matter of fact, you were only spewing venom and propaganda and undermining anything that we do so far. And now you're launching this attack on us when we had a peace process going on, right? Connect the dots. So we had this report in IRNA. Ismail Baqai told reporters on Sunday evening that the top diplomat will depart for Syria on Sunday. That's tomorrow. The spokesperson said that Araghchi will also visit Turkey on the second leg of his tour, which will be followed by a third destination without naming it. It could be Russia. According to Baqai, the Iranian foreign minister will hold the negotiations on regional issues, including the latest developments in West Asia. Now, we've had back and forth talks with Iran and Turkey. They have been at odds in Syria, like they have been at odds in other locations too. As a matter of fact, Erdogan, when Iran launched this historic attack on Israel in April, he undermined it. It shows you the level of underlying tensions. Although they have massive coordination in terms of economy and other stuff too, but they do have tensions, Iran and Turkey. And Turkey tries to undermine the Iranian role when it comes to supporting the resistance fronts in the region. Something that has been proven to anyone with a pair of eyes. That has been proven completely in the past year, just over a year. Which countries were participating in resisting the biggest war criminals in the region? Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, with involvement from Syria. These were the people of... Did someone else participate? Did any other country-backed movement participate? Were any of these tanks moving to Aleppo and Hama now and on their way potentially down south? Were they activated? I don't know, towards the Golan Heights or something? Or not? No, they haven't. They haven't been. But this diplomatic effort could potentially be fruitful. Tomorrow we will see what would be the results of the first day when it comes to Syria. Now, mind you, Iran sees this as a big threat. Iran sees this as a big threat. And it's important to note that in previous years, many parts of Syria were under the control of the armed opposition in Syria. But how long did they last? Not very long. Not very long. And although this is a significant thing happening, that is almost resembling the massive wave of ISIS in Iraq and Syria in just over a decade ago. It has things that resemble the level and the fact that other sides are also confirming that it's happening. But again, these efforts could be fruitful. Tomorrow we'll see what happens in Syria. The day after, maybe, that's if it's the day after, unless he stays the foreign minister of Iran in Syria for more than that. And then we will hopefully also cover them as well.